This winter, I can already feel it's going to be one for the history books. Not because we've got some simple forecast pinned down, not because it's all neatly mapped out on a chart, but because right now, all across the globe, our atmosphere is shifting. Giant weather patterns are colliding, tugging at each other, trying to wrestle for control. And when that kind of tug-of-war happens on a planetary scale, you can bet we're going to feel the aftershocks right here in the United States. We're talking Arctic blasts that can knock the breath out of your lungs. We're talking about blizzards so fierce they'll bury cars and shut down cities. We're talking about severe storms ripping across the heartland in the middle of January. It's all possible this year. But here's the question that keeps me up at night. Where is this going to hit the hardest? Because this isn't just a forecast. This is a story. It's the story of a battle raging in the sky. On one side, in the Pacific Ocean, there's this ghostly, half-formed La Niña. Weak, fragile, almost like it's gasping for control. On the other side, 60,000 feet above the North Pole, we've got the polar vortex, that spinning monster of Arctic air. And let me tell you, it's looking unstable. That's when we start talking about the kind of cold that doesn't just chill you, it cuts through you. Now, I've got to walk you through the big player first, the Pacific. Normally, a La Niña is like dropping a giant boulder into a river. It forces the current, in our case the jet stream, into a predictable pattern. Cold and snow up north, dry warmth down south. Easy enough. But this year, that boulder isn't a boulder at all. It's more like tossing a pebble, maybe even just a marble. The ocean temps are barely below average. You can see the pattern trying to form, but it's weak, it's shaky, and any decent atmospheric wave could wash it away completely. And that's where the volatility comes in. No strong driver means no locked-in pattern. It means anything can happen. But even with that uncertainty, when we look at the big three, the American model, the European model, the Canadian model, they're all showing the same picture. And when they line up like that, I pay attention. They're painting a winter split right down the middle of the country. North versus south. Warm and dry down low. Cold and stormy up high. If you're in California, the Southwest, or stretching across to the Carolinas, brace for a warmer, drier winter. In fact, 2 to 4 degrees above normal warmth and 20 to 40% less precipitation. Translation? The drought is about to get worse. Heating bills might dip in the Southeast, but for the Southwest, the fire risk is real, and it's not going away. But if you're in the North, buckle up. We're talking enhanced storm tracks, Arctic intrusions, and more snow. And here's where things get wild, where that southern warmth slams into the northern cold. That's the battlefield. That's where the biggest blizzards will spin up. That's where ice storms could wreak havoc. That's where tornadoes in December suddenly become possible. This isn't just a forecast. It's setting up to be high-stakes weather drama, and we're all characters in it. And I can't talk about this winter without bringing up the polar vortex. People hear that term and picture some doomsday monster, but here's what it really is. Imagine a spinning top of frigid Arctic air, way up in the stratosphere. When it's strong and stable, it keeps all that cold locked up where it belongs, over the pole. But if that top wobbles, if it slows down, or even splits apart, boom! The freezer door swings wide open, and North America gets blasted. And based on everything we're seeing, the odds of that happening this winter are high. I'm expecting 2, maybe 3 major disruptions. And when they hit, we're not just talking about a cold snap. We're talking weeks of bitter Arctic outbreaks. Minus 30 wind chills, minus 40, minus 50 in some spots. The kind of cold you tell your grandkids about. From the snow-packed Cascades to lake-effect blizzards slamming Buffalo. From ice storms across the Ohio Valley to fire weather in California. This is shaping up to be a winter that none of us will forget. And if the analog years are right, if history repeats itself like it did in 2010 or 2007, then we could be staring down a season of absolute chaos. So here's the bottom line. This winter is going to test us. Some of you will be shoveling record snow, others will be begging for rain. And in between, that's where the storms will roar to life, fueled by the clash of 2 very different worlds. Now, zoom in on the Pacific waters. You've got these cooler than normal zones draped across the equator. But then up near Alaska, we've seen a pocket cooling down, which is a little less favorable. Still, if you take the whole region as one big picture, it's looking solid. Ideally, I'd love to see the cooling lock itself more in the Central Pacific. That's where the magic happens. But hey, we've got time. Patterns shift. And honestly, this early setup is nothing to scoff at. Over in the Atlantic, it's a different beast. We've got warm waters stretching everywhere. The Gulf, the Caribbean, just off the east coast and out into the open Atlantic. And here's where I put on my forecaster's cap. Warm water doesn't just sit there. It pumps heat and energy into the atmosphere. That warmth influences ridges, blocks, and even how Arctic air funnels down. If those warm anomalies shift closer to Canada or Greenland, that's where things get really exciting. That's where you can see those blocking patterns that hold cold air over the US for weeks at a time. And trust me, that's a game changer for winter weather. So what does all this mean when we look short term? Well, the first models I pulled up, the CFS daily runs, are showing us some of the same themes we've been talking about. Along the east coast, we've got these backdoor cold fronts sliding in, teasing us with some early cool shots. Out west, it's the opposite. Cooler air dipping in, which pops a ridge right in the central states. That ridge is like a brick wall. It keeps the east warmer than you'd want if you're hoping for early cold. That's your classic negative P&A setup. Trough in the west, ridge in the east. But here's where it gets interesting. As we roll into late October, this model throws us a curveball. Suddenly, the warmth over the west begins to build, which flips the script. Now we're talking about cooler than normal conditions spilling into the central and eastern US. And if you've been watching these patterns closely, this flip actually lines up with what we saw back in early September. It's like déjà vu, the same atmospheric dance, but now with bigger stakes as we head toward winter. Moving into November, we see that theme hang on. Interior areas warm up a bit, but the coastlines, especially the east and Gulf, hang on to that chill. And then December. Oh man, December is when the gear shift hits. The positive P&A really takes shape. A strong ridge builds up near Hudson Bay and coastal Canada. And you know what that means. The door opens wide for Arctic air to come flooding into the central and eastern states. That's the kind of setup where you wake up one morning, and suddenly it feels like deep winter came overnight. January looks a little bit more mixed. Some thawing, some give and take. But February is cold, no question. If this pattern verifies, the east is staring down a bone-chilling month, while the west stays warm. Then March pulls a fast one on us, flipping warm again in the east, almost like last year where winter slammed the brakes right at the finish line. Precipitation-wise, the models are a bit trickier. I'll be honest, long-range precipitation forecasts are always tougher to trust. Right now, October through December looks fairly typical, maybe wetter in the north central and drier in the east. January and February, models are hinting at drier conditions in the east, which would be brutal given the drought stress already there. But keep in mind, these models miss on rainfall a lot more often than they miss on temperature trends. So I'm watching it, but not betting the farm on it. I also pulled up the Canadian model, the CanSIPs, just to compare. And it's fascinating because while the American CFS wants a warmer October, the Canadian says, nope, we're cooling the east early. By December, both agree on the same big theme, positive P&A, colder air digging into the heart of the country. By February, it's the same story, cold east, warm west. It's nice when models actually line up, because that builds confidence. So where does that leave us? Honestly, I'm excited. This isn't one of those winters where you shrug and say, hey, nothing to see here. The signals we're seeing: weak La Niña, positive P&A potential, warm Atlantic waters. They're all ingredients for a season full of twists. Could it change? Absolutely. That's the atmosphere. But if you're asking me right now, the stage is set for a winter that's going to deliver some serious cold and some serious drama, especially east of the Mississippi. And that's why I'll keep bringing you these updates, because these aren't one-and-done forecasts. The story evolves. The puzzle pieces shift, and I want you right there with me as we track every twist and turn leading into this fall and winter season. So if you're as fascinated by this as I am, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next update, because I'll be back in just a couple weeks with fresh data and maybe a whole new chapter in this unfolding story. And of course, drop me a comment. What do you want this winter to bring? Are you rooting for snowstorms, or are you hoping the cold skips your backyard this year? Let's talk about it down below.